What's up, Geek family? My name is Pete. We're coming at you today with a special episode of the Alamo City Geek Speak. This one's going to be centered on League of Legends and the League of Legends World Championship Series. I'm here with my friend Patrick. Patrick, say hello.
Hello.
How you doing, Patrick? How you doing
I'm
today?
doing good.
Awesome. Patrick is a avid League of Legends player. He's on a team. He loves League of Legends. He's been with I want to call it a sport. Obviously, it's such a big thing now. For a long time. And he's here today to talk some League with me. I'm admittedly very, very naive to the entire thing. I've played a few games back in the day, wasn't very good at it, and never played again. Pat's been with it. He's a gold level player currently in his league. And he's here to talk about, just everything that's good about League of Legends and, some of the funny stuff that we've read, regarding some players and teams and whatnot. And just kind of the sense of debauchery that can come out of there too. And then of course, the main focus is the game itself, how great it is and how it's this big thing. So Pat, tell me about yourself, about your league history, basically, what's going on right now, and what did you do last weekend? Also, you were in a tournament.
Yes, sir. I started League probably at the end of season 2, beginning of season 3. So it's been about 3 years now since I started. I started playing in the top lane was probably where I began my adventure in League. But the more I played, the more I realized I was not very good in the top lane. So I converted to a support player, and that's where I've really shined as far as my gaming goes. As for this last weekend, my team, we went to Corpus Christi for a tournament called RealmsCon, or tournament at a convention called RealmsCon. The tournament was named Edge of the Water. It was a lot of fun. It was the first tournament I've been to personally. First time I played on LAN, so that was an adventure. We did really well. We ended up getting second. The only team we lost to, it was a double elimination tournament. The only team we lost to the entire time was the team that ended up winning the whole thing. So
I see. Wow.
I'd like to think we did pretty well.
It seems like you guys did, because I believe we were talking. Of course, guys, if you guys don't know, we talk ahead of all these episodes, so we get acquainted with the material before we put it out there. You're definitely saying that the team above you guys, I guess, that won the tournament, they were at a higher level within their own league in the actual game.
Oh yeah, definitely. Basically, the way the ranking system works in League is the lowest is bronze.
Very familiar.
Then it goes bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, master tier, and then challenger tier. And challenger is basically the top 200 people in the country.
Oh, wow.
And so as you'd imagine, it kind of works like a pyramid, with bronze being the base and the most people being in bronze,
Right.
and kind of works its way upward. I think diamond holds only the top, like, less than 3% of the people that play the game. Like, there's not a lot of people up there. Mm-hmm. And so the team that we were playing actually had nothing but diamond and platinum players. And so on an individual skill basis, they were a lot better than we were mechanically.
Right. But you guys had a better strategy overall,
Yep.
so you were able to take a few games away from them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. As far as team went, my team had been together longer than theirs had, and we'd had a lot more practice with one another. And basically every team, for the most part, has what's called a shot caller, who their voice is the one voice that's more important than anyone else's on the team, where when they say that the team goes to do something, everyone does it.
Okay.
And the idea behind that is, because League is such a fast-paced game, you don't want to waste a lot of time debating with each other, trying to figure out what we're going to do. You just want one guy who knows what he's talking about to make the decision, and then that's that. And
Right.
so our shot caller is really, really good at doing it. And so we were able to compete and contend as long as we're all feeding him solid information, so he's up to date on what he needs to know. He can get us to where we need to be at the right time.
Right. Oh, guys, don't mind the dog in the background. Of course,
Yeah,
she's a wonderful pup. Well, that seems amazing. That, I guess, obviously everything's, strategy is like the number one thing in just about anything you do competitively. And I think it's just really great that you have these, you've established that, with your team. How long have you guys been together?
Most of us have been together for 2 years. We had two people that
Wow.
joined at the beginning of this season.
Okay.
Um, we were gonna go to the same tournament but last year, but I ended up not having the money due to all sorts of reasons. So,
Always comes down to all sorts of reasons. I agree
oh
with
yeah,
that.
and so we were able to this year, and we did really, really well. So I
That's
was glad
great.
we were able to go.
That's awesome. So, Pat, if you want to plug your team and everybody in there, if you guys have a stream, this would be great to, to kind of get out there. Do you guys usually stream your games or any kind of content?
Sometimes we do. One of our players, pretty much is the only one that streams. His Twitch, I can't even think of it on the top of my head. Um, I think it's Mac the Merc. It might be.
Okay.
He's our jungler, so he pretty much is one of the most important people in the early game.
Right.
Um, Sometimes he streams us. Most of the time he doesn't. It just depends on the mood. We don't like to necessarily stream our practices because obvious reasons. We don't want people to see what we're doing as far as like
Obviously,
the
right?
teams
Yeah.
we play against. But yeah. So
Okay, well, that's great. What we'll do is we'll put a link at the bottom of the video. Everybody will have a look at it. Next time you
yep,
guys are streaming, we'll plug you on the Facebook group, guys. If you like League of Legends, you got to check this out. Pat's my friend, and he loves the game. He's been with the game for several years, like he just said. So you really have to check that out for him. Give him that support, man. Next time you guys are in a tournament, I hope you guys kill it because obviously this gets very competitive, and like you said,
yep,
you came in at the end of season 2 or 3, or the beginning of
yep,
3. So you're on season 5 now, right?
yep,
That's what it is. Okay,
yep,
so season 5 is about to conclude, I believe, right, with the World
yep.
Championship Series. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
tell me about the World Championship Series, man.
All right. So basically, the way Worlds works is we've got five major regions that Riot considers, and those are North America, Europe, Korea, China, and Taiwan.
Alrighty.
And so the way that they organize Worlds is that you take the top three teams from each major region, except for Taiwan. Taiwan, you only take the top two teams.
Okay.
Just because it's a smaller region, we're talking about one country versus all of China. Or well, I guess China's one country too, but China's also 1 billion people.
It's a
So
lot more.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Korea also gets its own just because of the fact that they're so good. Um,
I see.
Korea's insanely good. But basically the way they organize it is they take the top three teams from North America, Korea, China, and Europe,
Hmm.
and then they take the top two teams from Taiwan. So that's a total of 14 teams right there. And then they add in two other teams from what they call wildcard regions. So like a lot of countries are still developing their League of Legends communities. Like Japan's just now starting to get into it. Brazil, Hungary. There's a lot of different individual regions that are starting to develop. And so what they have before Worlds is called the International Wildcard Tournament, and they take the top two teams from that tournament and put them on the world stage. And for the most part, the wildcard teams, of course, are not anywhere near the same level as the major regions.
Okay.
But the idea for it for them is that they get a whole bunch of experience because when you're playing against the best in the world, you're going to get better. That way they can take it back to their own region, and the region just gets better because what they've been a part of,
Because of what
basically,
they've
is
been
the
a part
idea.
of. And
Yeah.
I guess I want to get off on a tangent on that. Do you feel like watching these folks play the game on a stream or maybe on YouTube, does it really develop your own personal skills as a player?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I like to look at it like um, watching pro football or watching pro basketball. Like whenever you watch the best doing it, you pick up from what they're doing.
Right.
I mean, of course, you're not going to instantly get better. You have to apply the things you're watching and learning to your own game. But it's still something that you're gaining knowledge that you wouldn't have gained otherwise. And for the most part, in sports, knowledge is one of the most powerful things you can have.
And I'm 100% behind that. I mean, you watch like somebody really good at football, obviously throw
Mhm.
one. You're gonna
Yeah,
be like, well, like I'm gonna try to like if I'm on a high school football team and I'm the
yeah.
quarterback, I'm gonna try to mimic what I see on TV. Um, I guess the other portion of it is we were talking about a little bit earlier was you can be really great at something,
Mhm.
but there's also factors that obviously work against you when you're talking about the game. And in
Yep,
league, you mentioned that there's items obviously that alter the way
yep.
that the game is going to flow. How important is that in World Championship Series? I mean, like, what happens, when
Oh
somebody,
man.
suddenly just like demolishes somebody else?
It's one of those things where if one person gets ahead, the reason the pros are so good at this game is that for the most part they can get one kill on whoever their lane opponent is,
Hmm.
and that lane's over because they're so good. They know how to take that lead and just snowball it and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's something that a lot of lower level players, even myself, aren't necessarily good at. Is when you get a lead, keeping that lead and continuing to dominate.
Right.
And so that's one of those things. That's why they're the best. That's why they're at the highest level.
That's what I think.
And they know how to look at each individual situation in the game. And there's I think there's over 100 items in League of Legends, and they know what each of those items does. They know what situations they need to get which item. I mean, it's unreal. Their knowledge of the game is just off the charts. I mean, it's to the point where basically you have minion waves that come out every 30 seconds.
Right.
They know how to manipulate the minion waves so that they'll crash as a big wave into a turret right when they need them to. Like it's really something to watch.
And it sounds like, and like I was mentioning earlier, like I'm very, very bad at League, so I would never
Yeah.
be able to do that on my own, obviously. Um, when I first started, it was like, I guess it was a very popular game, but it was still getting off the ground.
Yep.
People were still developing their own personal skills and stuff like that. So whenever you look at the World Championship Series and you see these players that have, developed over time, um, with these strategies, like, you would never think about, obviously, to apply it on your own without actually seeing it. Um, I guess, like, the overall kind of thing is it makes it exciting because you're watching literally something that may have not been done before on
Yeah.
this world stage. And
Yep.
I guess the other the other portion of it is a lot of these folks, they've come from just regular, maybe Twitch streams, and then now they're on the World Championship Series.
Hmm.
You know, how difficult is it to build up to this level? Like, I mean, how do you even get into one of these teams?
Oh man, it's crazy. Basically, the way they have it set up now is you have the LCS, which is the League Championship Series,
Hmm.
which is where all the pro teams are at, and then you have what's called the Challenger Series. And at the end of every what's called a split, they basically the League of Legends series or season is split into two different splits.
Okay.
And at the end of each split, you have relegations where the bottom teams in the LCS have to play the top teams in the Challenger Series, and they swap out. And basically, or if the Challenger team beats the LCS team, they swap out. So it keeps the best talent at the top at all times is the idea behind it.
Nice.
Um, I mean, there was one of the biggest teams in in the North American LCS right now. Their name's Cloud9. They were pretty much they came from the Challenger Series, and the first split they had in the LCS, I think they went something like 25-3,
Wow.
which was unheard of before that, because NA as a region is considered very weak. Um, Compared to at least China and Korea and places like that. We've gotten a lot stronger over time, but
Hmm.
at that time, that was the middle of season 3 when Cloud9 entered. So it was the second split in season 3, and it was kind of a big deal because NA finally had a team that people felt like could compete.
Right.
And since then, since they've entered, North America as a whole has just gotten so much better. But that's kind of the idea behind the challenger scene is it lets you bring in new talent, new teams that might rock the entire LCS that you've got right now.
I see. And I believe like a few years ago, maybe even last year, Cloud9 was actually getting really good. You know,
Hmm.
and in particular, even in the World Championship Series, everybody, was really into it. I mean,
Yep.
I would hear, because I would hear people at work, talk
Mhm.
about League of Legends, and like, it would be like older gentlemen, like, and I'd be like everybody knows, like,
Yeah.
what am I missing out on? So, I mean, that's why I have so many questions, obviously,
Mhm.
because like I said, I'm pretty naive on the entire thing. Now, I guess for as far as prediction goes for this World Championship Series, where do you see the teams at right now? Do you think Western teams
Um,
might actually have a good shot this year?
it's actually interesting because what happened at the end of last season was really interesting. Um, for the most part, since the Koreans have entered the worlds and playing on the world stage, they've dominated. It wasn't until last year that a Western team had finally managed to beat a Korean team. Before that, we couldn't beat them.
Right,
That's Europe or North America. We couldn't touch them.
just couldn't do
And
it.
so last year, Cloud9 and TSM, which are both North American teams, managed to take in a best of five series one game off like the two best teams in the world, which were Samsung White and Samsung Blue,
Hmm.
and they're both Korean teams. And Samsung, they were both the heavy favorites to win the entire tournament.
Right,
Like, wasn't even close. And so what ended up happening at the end of last season is the top 20 Korean players in Korea, or the people that were considered the top 20 Korean players, all left Korea and went to Chinese teams because China was paying them more than, or the Chinese team owners were paying them more than the Korean team owners were.
hmm,
And so what ended up happening is Korea as a region got a lot worse than it was before. China improved, but only a little bit. Because like I said, League of Legends is a really team heavy oriented game.
right.
And so the fact that you've got a team with a language barrier where you've got half the people speaking Chinese and half the people speaking Korean, and it's really hard to convey entire ideas across.
Right, I would imagine so.
It made the Chinese teams better like on an individual scale, but as far as teamwork, they got worse.
I see.
And so China as a region probably stayed about the same as it was before. Korea got worse, and so Europe and North America at the same time are just still steadily improving. And so it's created this weird vibe at Worlds this year where anyone can win. I mean, there's one Korean team called SK Telecom T1
Hmm.
who has arguably the best player in the entire world. His name's Faker.
Okay,
Um,
and I've heard of
they,
Faker.
yeah,
Yeah, I've definitely heard of him.
he's considered by the community the god of League of Legends. Like he's unbelievable. He's got entire like articles written about him on SB Nation and places like that. Like
SB
he's
Nation,
yeah.
really? Okay. For
Um,
those of you that don't know, that's a sports blog.
yep. They're actually also covering the League of Legends World Championship this year. Like
That's awesome.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so basically, SK Telecom's the team that's heavily favored. They're a Korean team. They actually won in season three. There's a couple of different players on it now, but they're still the most consistently good team. Um, the Chinese teams actually are doing horribly. Uh, they were, for the most part, pretty favored going into the tournament.
Hmm.
And as it stands, one of them's already knocked out in the group stages, and we'll find out tomorrow if another one is. It's very likely they will be.
Nice.
Um, and unfortunately for North America, we're not exactly doing very well either. We've got we've got two of our teams that have already been knocked out as of today. But tomorrow Cloud9 plays, and right now in their group stages, Cloud9 is 3-0. And so in the group stages, it's groups of four. So
Hmm.
there's four groups of four because there's 16 teams total.
Right.
And so you play each team in your group twice, so you play 6 games. And so right now they're 3-0 in their group, so they won all their first 3 games, and then they play tomorrow the rest of the 3 games. And as long as they win one, they're guaranteed to go through no matter what. Um, and it's actually really interesting with Cloud9 because they had a very turmoil filled split, I would say. I mean, since they entered the scene, they've always been top two in North America.
Hmm.
This season, at one point, out of the 10 teams in the North American LCS, they were ninth place. They made a change to bring a retired player back because he was their shot caller. and he had retired at the end of last split because mechanically he wasn't as good,
Okay.
and so they replaced him in the mid lane, thinking that it would fix the problem because you've got someone who's mechanically better, and so as a team they're going to be better. But it didn't end up working that way because the guy that they brought in, he was the number one challenger player in Europe. Like he's incredibly good, but he had no experience playing in the LCS.
Right.
And so it's completely different playing solo queue versus playing in the LCS. Like 180 degrees difference.
Wow.
And so they weren't very good, and they ended up falling into ninth place. And then their jungler Meteos, who's widely considered to be for a long time one of the best junglers in North America, stepped down so they could bring back High, who was the one that had retired, and he went into the jungle, and just based solely off his shot calling, they managed to get into seventh place. They competed in what was called the Gauntlet, because the way qualification works for Worlds is that you have, over the course of two splits, based on where you finish, you get points.
Okay.
So basically, the way they work this is if you finish number one in the summer split, that means you're the best team in that region going into the Worlds, logically, of course.
Logically,
And
yeah.
so that means you get the number one seed from your region at Worlds. The number two seed is determined by taking the combined points from the spring split and the summer split based on where you finished.
Right.
And so that determines who the second seed is. And then the third seed, they take all the top four teams point wise over the two splits. And over the course of one weekend, they run what's called a gauntlet, where the way they worked it was the team with the lowest point total plays the team with the second lowest point total in a best of three. The winner of that plays the next team in a best of three the next day, and the winner of that plays the final team in a best of three the last day.
Wow,
And
that's
so,
a lot of games.
yeah, it's a lot of games in a rapid. It ended up the way it ended up working was because Cloud9 ended up being at the bottom. They had to play every single one of the rounds, and their first two rounds they had to do reverse sweeps, which in League of Legends is something really difficult to do because it's such a game dependent on mentality that if you get behind, it's really hard to keep your morale up, and if your morale is down, you're not going to win.
Right.
So what Cloud9 managed to do was they were down. It was, I don't know if I said best of two or best of threes, but they're all best of fives actually.
Oh wow,
And
so there's even more games that they had to play.
Yeah, there's
then.
more tournaments, more
Wow.
games they had to play. So they had to win the best 3 out of 5. And so what Cloud9 ended up doing in this gauntlet, the first two rounds, was they were down 2-0 and had to come back and win 3 games in a row to win the entire thing.
Oh man.
So there's what's really neat about what happened with the North American Gauntlet this year is there's only 18 games in the league in the splits
Okay.
total. So every team plays each other twice, and in the Gauntlet, Cloud9 actually ended up playing 14 games. So they almost played an entire split just in the Gauntlet
Just in the gauntlet itself, and this is over
so
the course of one weekend.
of 3 days. Yep.
3 days. Wow.
Yeah, so it was really intense. And so Cloud9 from the 7th place team ended up qualifying for Worlds from the Gauntlet as the 3rd seed in North America. And it was really cool to watch, especially because I'm a Cloud9 fan personally.
Right.
And so it was a blast for me. But going into Worlds this year, because they were having such a horrible split and they had such a difficult time qualifying for Worlds to begin with, no one was giving them a chance. Like out of the 16 teams at Worlds, people were calling them the 14th best team there. So that meant the only teams they were better than were the 2 wildcard teams.
Oh wow. So bottom of the barrel once more.
Bottom of the barrel, but turns out they're 3-0 in a group they were supposed to go 0-6 in. So it's definitely they're the hope for North America right now because the other 2 North American teams are out,
Completely
and
out.
Cloud9's got a good chance of going through.
Well, obviously, we keep track of it as best we can as we're watching it. Like you did mention, Cloud9 has 3 wins, 0 losses. So,
Yep.
I do see SKT also. They have no losses as well.
Yep.
So
They went 6-0.
6-0. So I guess in the overall kind of thing, like we were talking about how you were saying how Korean players went over to Chinese, teams and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then they're Cloud9, had like somebody come back out of retirement.
Yep.
I guess this kind of the kind of culture is like these people have personalities. Also, they're people like you
Yep.
and me. How much of the controversy going into this World Championship Series, has affected it overall. I guess in the grand scheme of things, like I know, like we were talking about earlier, players have been banned, for what you said they were starting Smurf accounts and then
Yep.
just getting into the right will actually ban the player, from actually competing. And then I guess like they're kind of like the NFL if you want to look at it that way. If you're talking about
Well, see, and the problem isn't necessarily that they were making the Smurf accounts. All sort like every player has all the pro players have Smurf accounts.
right.
The problem is that when they make the Smurf account and they get it up to platinum or diamond and they sell it to someone is when it's a problem.
And that's when it's a problem. Like, there's nothing wrong with them making cash on the side for just streaming the game in general.
Yeah.
But when you make accounts and you sell them, that's a no-no.
Yep, that's a big no-no. Just the idea behind it is that it ruins the competitive environment when you have someone that's like a bronze level player buying a platinum or diamond account from a pro player. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you don't if you're in platinum and diamond, you don't want to get someone on your team that's bronze level. It basically loses you the game. And so it ruins the competitive environment of the solo queue climbing of the rankings. And so Riot's not a fan of that. What happened this year that we were talking about a little bit beforehand was Zhao, who is the mid laner on Team Impulse in North America. They were actually one of the favorites to get to Worlds as the third seed over Cloud9, but because Zhao got busted selling that account, he got suspended for the rest of the split. And so they had to bring in a new mid laner that wasn't as good and not as used to playing in a competitive environment like the LCS. They ended up losing to Cloud9 in the Gauntlet because they didn't have the experience that Zhao would have brought.
Right.
So it definitely makes a big difference. But as far as drama going into this year, there really hasn't been a lot of it.
That's great.
Most of the drama has been centered around, like I said earlier, Cloud9 making this Gauntlet run from 7th place, and that's kind of been the biggest little story going on, just because it's an underdog story.
And it sounds completely underdog, because if Zhao did not get obviously suspended, we could have been looking at a completely different kind of group this year. And I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, you go from one little thing, and then it costs you an entire World Championship Series, like And I guess it's not a little thing in the grand scheme of things. It is a big thing. Obviously, you're not allowed to sell accounts to other people. I mean, Blizzard doesn't let you do that. With its WoW characters. I mean, you're not going to buy an Xbox Live account for somebody who plays Call of Duty because they're ranked 10 or ranked diamond in their division or whatever, or they have like all 10 prestige. It's a bit of an oxymoron. Obviously, this means a lot more to people than anything else. And I guess what I also have a question about is, why did he feel he needed to make more money off of there if he's already kind of making money off of League in general?
Well, there is a little bit of controversy there as far as payment of players go. Most of the players in the LCS, as a salary from the team owners, actually only make about $28,000 to $30,000 a year.
I see.
The idea behind that, though, is they don't pay for their housing. They're like, the team owners pay for the house, and they basically pay for the transportation to get them wherever they need them to go. So, like, basically, there's not a lot of reason to pay them. Basically, that $28,000 they're getting is paying for food and then whatever personal stuff they want
for an entire year.
For an entire year, or as long as the contract is that they're with the team. So it's kind of one of those things that it's like, yeah, they're not making a lot of money technically, but they're not. They don't. What are they doing with the money? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, if I was living in a house completely paid for, making $28,000 a year, I'd be fat and happy. But
most Americans would, obviously, but
of
course you got to keep up your skills in the game. So I figured,
they actually play for and that's another part of the problem is how much they actually spend playing. About 12 hours a day is dedicated to playing the game. Um, Riot requires teams to allow their players, or requires teams to make their players go exercise for at least an hour every day. Um, that way they're not just sedentary and it keeps them healthier.
Right.
There's a little bit of a controversy going on right now because High, who's the player that retired and came back, and a few other people that play the game have developed wrist problems from sitting at their computer 12 hours a day. You know what I mean?
Right.
When
Yeah.
you're constantly on the keyboard clicking that mouse, you're gonna carpal tunnel, things like that are gonna start to show up, and so it's just it. There's a lot of people trying to get Riot to be held accountable for that, just because these people are dedicating a lot of their time to making this game of theirs a big thing, and so they're saying that they should take care of the players.
I mean, and I agree too. It's not like they have some kind of, if they get injured on the job, it's not exactly like
Yep.
Riot's going to go over there and pay your medical bills. If you're making $28,000 a year and you require wrist surgery for the game that you have to play,
Yep.
In order to make money, you're not going. I mean, it just boggles my mind that
Yeah.
that they don't have some kind of like support
I guess.
for the under.
Well, the big problem in it lies with Riot actually isn't who pays these people. The team owners and the organizations are who pay them.
Right.
And so Riot looks at it like, well, these are your employees, and as your employees, it should be the team's responsibility to take care of that. Kind of like in the NBA, it's not the NFL or not the NBA. It's not the NBA as a whole that takes care of every team and their injury and the players' injuries. It's the team itself.
It's the team itself, right?
So that's kind of what they're looking at, and that's what makes sense to me. I mean, the people who are paying these kids to sit there for 12 hours a day playing this game need to be the ones that are held responsible for making sure that their health is in top shape.
Right. And I guess like is there no regulation? Like, I mean, obviously, in my eyes, it's very easy to look at this and just be like, well, if I'm going to get paid to do this and I enjoy it, I'm probably not going to go out and exercise for an hour. I mean, this could be me because I'm lazy. But I mean, like, I guess there's, if they have, there's some kind of heavy regulation where they need to have checkups every once in a while. Is there an auditing process? Or
I'm not entirely sure about that. All I know for sure is that the teams are required to have their players go exercise. And for the most part, they all want to do it because, I mean, there's this entire persona around professional video game players that they're all like big, chunky, and not healthy kids. But for the most part, looking at the pro league players, they're all pretty skinny, in shape guys. Like
Right.
They're not. I mean, there are a few, that are a little overweight, but for the most part, they're in okay shape.
And then I guess that's the stigma that we've put for these people. It's like that they're out of shape or just not good. I like to believe that success breeds other success. So if you're really naturally talented at at a particular sport, you're probably good at other things. Like it just like if you're born and bred a winner, then you're gonna be one. So I mean, the reason I guess my concern is like if I'm going to play for a team or something like that, I want to make sure that my team is taking care of me, and I want to make sure that somebody's being held accountable for some kind of like process, to just keep everybody healthy. Because I had no idea that I mean, obviously we've heard. I mean, I've read articles, where you get carpal tunnel syndrome and stuff like that, especially about pros and stuff like that. But it's like I had no idea that the team has to take care of that. I mean, it's really something when you look at it on one thing. Now, I guess the other portion is we're about to wrap up over here, Pat. Let's see. Where can you watch the World Championship Series this month?
The way they have it set up is there's a website specifically called lolesports.com.
Okay.
They will stream whenever there is games going. They have like a video player that'll open up, and you can choose what you want to stream from. Like YouTube, Azubu, and Twitch are the three options that they have contracts with.
Already.
And so you basically choose what you want to stream from, and they'll just stream it right there from the LOL Esports site. And another thing too that's pretty cool on there is they've got I mean it's literally like NBA.com or NFL.com, where they've got articles, they've got um, like the whole schedule of what's coming in the next week. So you'll know when you want to tune in to watch it. Everything you need to know will be right there on LOL Esports.
Awesome. Pat, appreciate you being on the show. Guys, check out the World Championship Series for League of Legends this month. Like we said, LOEsports.com. Check them out on Twitch, YouTube, Azubu. We're going to put Pat's stream on the link on the bottom over here as soon as we get that link over here. And, check out for more episodes regarding the League of Legends World Championship Series. We're going to try to do this every week, at least hopefully, for the month of October while the WCS is going on. And then at the end of it, we'll have a wrap-up one, just kind of see, what happened, in between the two. I'm going to try my best myself because I do know that, some of the streams start at 3 o'clock in the morning my time.
Yeah, man, it's awful.
Yeah, but, there's obviously restreams, people on YouTube, recording them, checking them out. If you have an interest in League of Legends, definitely check it out. Pat, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Any final words from you?
Nah, man.
All right, Geek family. Y'all have a good one. Check out the World Championship Series like we've been plugging the entire 30 minutes you've been talking. Pat, I appreciate it again. Thank you so much for being on the show. And check us out on Alamo City Geek Speak on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. And, of course, don't forget to comment, subscribe, and like on YouTube. You guys have a good one. We'll see you next time on the Alamo City Geek Speak. Audio.